James is going to be talking about a bunch of religious philosophy for the next while.
And science.
Okay, so go ahead, James.
Sorry for taking that swig. I'm just allowing the competition time to catch up. All right, so there was a very smart person got hold of Pauline on the internet, and she was saying, could you, I think he was saying to both of us, recommend books to read. And am I saying that person is smart because he or she is asking us? No.
Because that person wants to read.
Because that person, A, wants to read and wants to get an idea from other people. What
readers. Other readers.
Other readers.
Yeah.
So one of the things I do is when I'm looking through a bibliography, I'll check in the back. That's usually where bibliographies are. And I'll say, here it's like footnotes for Robert Graves. I'll say, which of these books would I like to get hold of? Every so occasionally, very occasionally, I'll actually buy them. These ones you'll find in used bookstores and stuff like that. So, the advantage of asking someone as old as me, and I'm 71 and about a half, is that I've read a lot of books and I can maybe guide people to stuff that's cheap or kind of seminal or stuff like that, because there are lots of different editions of classics. I'll give you an example. Confucius, Confucian Analects, the Great Learning and the Doctrine of the Mean. Confucius. Who put this out? Dover. They're awesome for putting out reprints of classics and other things that are not so classic. So here I've put the works of Mencius. I put a check mark there because I own it. The Dover edition. Again, it's translated with exegetical notes and dictionary of all characters by James Legge, or Legge, I don't know how to pronounce it. Anyway, already got that, but I've marked other things in here, like the I Ching, the Book of Changes. I actually got hold of that, okay? The text of Taoism, parts 1 and 2. I don't know how good they would be. They're translated by James Legge, and I don't know whether I'd end up recommending them over the best that I've been able to find. And I found a variety of different translations. So a philosophical translation, this is, featuring the recently discovered bamboo texts, so, stuff that was lost for a long while apparently, and rediscovered. Say discovered, but I guess it's rediscovered. Oh, yeah, I suppose. The nice thing about this is the characters aren't that big, so you'll notice how I've put scribbles in here and all that sort of stuff with the Chinese original. So it's got it translated in English. Each little, what are they called, chapters? Each little chapter might be not a very good designation, but it's got a translation and then a commentary to explain the translation, because especially with the Tao, or Tao, as it's called, it was traditionally called in English. Excuse me. The stuff, when you translate it, comes across as being pretty nebulous, vague, or whatever. Sometimes contradictory, and sometimes I think the contradiction is intended. But yeah, I went through this a while back. I think it was earlier this year I finished it up, maybe late last year. Yeah, earlier this year, finished 7th of March, 2025. Every page checkmark, and that's what I recommend doing, especially when you're dealing with stuff like philosophy or religion, poetry too for most people. Check each page. Don't trust the bookmark. Bookmarks just fall out. If you do use a bookmark, fold it over and hang it over the top of the page. Otherwise it'll slip out and you'll go, what have I read? And the sad thing is, and I'm a lot better at reading stuff now than when I was younger, like in university even. I'll go, have I read this before? If the bookmark slips out. But it would be perfect if I had something like a photographic memory or a eidetic memory. And then I'd be going, yeah, I know that, all that sort of stuff. But data entry for me just isn't that easy. It's easier, I think, for me than it is for anyone else I've ever run across, but that's a different issue. It's still not good enough for me. I'm just going to check it. Yeah, so bibliography of works cited. See? Now, this one I haven't gone through and checked stuff off because this is like secondary stuff, generally. And secondary literature, I don't recommend. Tertiary, like dictionary, encyclopedias particularly, I don't really recommend. I'm going to be recommending a Buddhist Penguin selected writings, Buddhist writings, which has some commentary at the beginning of each selection. But I try to give you stuff in the original, preferably stuff that has the original, in other words, in the original language. And surprise, surprise, very little world history, very little of world philosophy, very little of world literature has been written in English. So you're advised to be able to get to control the sources to whatever level you can get to. And that will depend to a large extent on what age you're at. If you're my age, you're probably not going to pick up very much. But I advise you to keep on picking stuff up, or if you haven't done much of it heretofore, to start it. One cannot, to use a line from William Butler Yeats, one cannot begin it too soon. I wasn't talking about learning. I was talking about love, actually, but doesn't matter. If it's something worth doing, one cannot begin it too soon. If you're 80 and you haven't really done much reading, start doing it now. Hopefully it'll extend your life. So these things, the Mencius, translated by Legge and reprinted in Dover, and this Confucius, I gather it's complete text, Analects, Great Learning, and the Doctrine of the Mean, 3 different works. Look at how big the script is, how big the characters are. Awesome. Because when you're dealing with Chinese characters, there's not really much of a criticism of this Tao, because this script is very clear. Now the other copies of the Tao that I have, and I have 2, I think 3 of them, they have the stuff in, I guess you could call it like cursive, which is basically written characters. And Chinese written characters, doesn't matter if it's done in Japanese, Chinese, presumably Korean and Vietnamese. I actually have got a book of classical Vietnamese literature, and every character in it is Chinese character. That's Vietnamese literature. I remember where I got it. It was at a used book sale at the library in Regina, the downtown library. And there were some Chinese people there, presumably students or something like that, exchange students. And there was one woman, just got down, she was looking at what, I had this stuff on the floor, there was so much that I was looking at, and all she said is, "It's not normal." I had to agree with her. It's not normal. And the thing is, folks, don't be normal. Don't be normal. Don't go out of your way like Sinead O'Connor. We were talking about her in the earlier broadcast from today, a podcast. She struggled to be something like abnormal. But don't go out of your way to be normal. Try to be exceptional. Not by cutting your hair and doing all sorts of superficial stuff. Get stuff stuffed into your brain. As many languages as possible. Start, however, with books. So, if you get hold of this, it's not going to cost you much more to get this Chinese text here. The commentary is wonderful. It'll help you out. Maybe it'll hinder you a little bit. But it'll give you a kind of a, maybe an into what one person thinks of how to interpret the Tao. Translation and commentary. But uses it as a jumping off point to actually look at the stuff. You might never be able to read it, but at least be able to study it. And I mean, here you got this very simple thing. It looks like it's supposed to be a man, maybe with two hands stuck out. Benevolence, or benevolent, right there. Okay? You got to know what that means in Confucian times, what it meant before, preferably what it means now. Okay? Here, we've got 6, the master, but it actually means something like child or infant. Ci, Kung Fu Ci, the master. So they just give Ci instead of Kung Fu Ci. Said is a mouth with a word in it. Looks like a tongue. Actually looks like a box, or like a maybe a bookshelf or something like that with only 2 shelves on it, whatever, 3 if you count the top. But it just you want to know this kind of stuff. Now this Confucian Analects, this is I haven't gone all the way through it. Actually, what I find more challenging in some ways is the introduction, because there's a lot of footnotes in it. I'll give you, or just like things in brackets and so on and so forth. And it's hard to read that. Here, where you've got the translation directly, it's awesome. You've got the translation here. It's divided into what are called chapters, more like paragraphs, and some of them are just a sentence or 2 long. But he calls them chapters, stuff like that. Where it'll get tough is when you're looking at the footnotes again. The stuff isn't translated in the footnotes. The same sort of thing with the Chinese script in the beginning. Yeah? But it's recommended because it's right there for you. You get this book on your shelves. If you can afford it, buy it. It's a classic. Dover puts out classic editions of the classics, okay? I suppose there are some sort of exceptions to the rule, but that I'm giving here, but it's stunning how good some of these books are. This thing is made for your shelf. Don't get it from a library or something like that. This one I recommend. Be nice if it were a little bit cheaper in paperback, but if it's in paperback and you think you're going to ruin it, photocopy it. It's for your own use. You should be able to photocopy it. It's not as though you're stealing from Dover or whatever. And then mark the photocopy up, and you can keep the original in pristine condition. So don't photocopy it and give it to someone else or anything like that. Don't mess around with someone's copyright. So this is something that is easily available any place, I gather, where there is a strong Chinese or Japanese Buddhist tradition. So this is the teaching of Buddha, or the teachings of Buddha, and it's bilingual. I presume it's done in the original Japanese, and then it's translated. Now this is not, I guess you'd have to almost like consider it a primary document. It's not a classical thing or anything like that. But there's nice spaces in here so you can put in translations of these sorts of things. Chinese script is actually easier to read, in Chinese than it is in Japanese, because Japanese has all these little phonetic symbols are basically what are called, it's part of a syllabary. So each symbol represents a syllable, not a vowel and or a consonant, or not a vowel or consonant. It's a syllable, generally a vowel and a consonant in Japanese. Every so occasionally will be the second consonant, an N, for example. Or Hokkaido, I think there's a K at the end of the first syllable, H-O-K, okay? But most of the syllables are actually done phonetically, and then every so occasionally there'll be what's called a kanji, which is Chinese. So this is like teaching or learning, stuff like this. This is a rather complicated thing here. Trying to find a simpler one that might show up on the screen a little bit better. But this one I've hardly gone through at all. I'm working my way through it, so I'm recommending it. I've already gone through the English. I figured I'd gone all the way through it. And Happy Honko. To someone, I won't mention the name, I got the second hand. I've actually gone through it once in the English. But in the Japanese, that's going to take me a while. So I'm not recommending this sight unseen for the English, because people are the person that was asking, I think was asking for stuff in English, translated in English or in the original English. None of these books I'm recommending were done originally in English. The Srimad Bhagavad, I'm not sure where I think it would be Bhagavatam. Looking at it. So this is the first canto, part 3. Canto is I think it means room originally, but it should be chant actually. I'm mixing it up with another thing, chant. Anyway, this is the first canto, part 1. These are 2 of the 50-volume series of this translation done by His Divine Grace. Don't take that too seriously. Is it A.C.? Yeah, A.C. Bhaktivedanta. So that's just a title accorded to him, maybe only by himself, I don't know. Swami, so it actually says Swami. But this, I think, is his real name, Prabhupada. I don't know what that means, glorious or glory, I'm not sure. Prabhupada. And these things are amazing too. They're a little bit like the Tao I was showing you. They've got text, original, Sanskrit, or Sanskrit, as people mispronounce it. I was mispronouncing it too, but maybe not so much. Then it's got a transliteration, which means it's put into Latin script. Then word by word translation, and which of course is totally out of order when it comes to English word order, because you really have to depend on the grammar. Generally the word endings, that's the way it usually is in Indo-European languages, and Sanskrit's an Indo-European language, the oldest attested, I gather. And then a translation, so a relatively smooth translation. This guy was born in a British colony, Prabhupada, and I'm pretty sure he came from West Bengal, part of India yet. Bangladesh is kind of like East Bengal. And then he gives a purport, and usually the purports go on way longer than the actual translation, but that's like his own word for commentary. Text 3. So he calls them texts, not chapters. Legg calls them chapters, but it doesn't really matter what they call it. The stuff's in there, and with this you can really start looking at the Sanskrit sound system. One cannot begin it too soon, because there are a lot of letters in it. In the Sanskrit, it's called Nagari script. And in the back here, this is awesome. It's got laid out the Sanskrit pronunciation guide. So all the letters and then the numerals. This looks very much like a 2. This looks very much like a 3. 1, not so much. 0 looks exactly the same. And then a pronunciation of the vowels. So it gives the vowels up here. These are consonants. There's a lot more consonants in the languages from the Indian subcontinent than there are in English, for example. And then it gives an example of the way vowels are combined with consonants. And then a guide to the pronunciation, generally reasonably good of the consonants.
Look at the size of that one that
Holy smokes, and we missed it.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Well, that one we're going to have to eat pretty quickly,
Yep,
right? Like today or
yep.
whatever. So it's a little bit hard. They talk about cerebrals. Oftentimes when people from the Indian subcontinent start trying to say D's and T's, they got da, 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 or da, da, da. And those are cerebrals, where the tip of the tongue goes up to the top of the palate, kind of like, or back of the alveolar ridge, which is the roll of gum behind your teeth at the front. And I guess to people from the Indian subcontinent, that sounds closer to our D's and T's. They do the same thing with certain types of S's and certain types of N's. I think they even do it with a sh sound. They have 2 sh sounds. One is sh and one is sh. So it has kind of like a guide to it. This thing I've recommended before. I have not gone through it much, but I don't know how you'd ever get hold of it. Printed in Oxford, and it is really old. I'm scared to go through it, but it actually has an introduction in Italian, of all things, and it's in Kashmiri or Kashmiri. It's a Lala Vakyani, the wise sayings of Lal Dead, mystic poetess of ancient Kashmir. So it's put out by the Asiatic Society in England, put out in 1920, so it's over 100 years old. And this is not a reprint. It is really falling apart, but it has in the Latin script the original Kashmiri, then it's got a Sanskrit translation, then an English translation. And then it has a commentary. And just because it's a little bit different than the traditional Sanskrit stuff, it comes recommended if you can get hold of it. I might have one of the few copies left in existence there. And if you get hold of it, I'll be working in it along with you. So here we go. This is probably put out by Canadian Bible Society or something like that. Maybe the Trinitarian Bible Society. The Greek text underlying the English Authorized Version of 1611. So I think the English Authorized Version would be the King James Version, but I thought the King James Version was a bit earlier than that. But 1611. And this is, you see, Kini, I'm not sure how you'd pronounce that, Kine. That means this A means the, Kini, new, Diatheke, not sure where the where the accent comes. That means testament. Yeah? Not very long. It's under 500 pages. And Kata Mathion, or wherever that accent comes, Evangelion means the good news, actually. Angel actually means message or messenger, and EU or EV, means good, the good news, the good message. Godspell, or gospel, shortened down. So that's according to Matthew, kata, Mattheon, or whatever. Lukon, kata, Lukon, so on and so forth. Now, I've gone through a lot of this, but truth in advertising, how far have I got out of the 500 pages? I'm a little over halfway, but that's in the original, no English here. But you're recommended to, if you want to read something that's worthwhile reading. I'm not saying it's great theology or philosophy, literature, or anything like that. I'm just talking about its influence. I'm not saying it's lousy either. It's just in terms of literature, philosophy, or theology. But I probably recommend something like the American Standard Version or the American Revised Version. If you're working out of the North American tradition, if you're working out of the English tradition, maybe the Oxford translation of the New Testament. I think you can get that just as a New Testament. Here, here's about a quarter of the Old Testament, or a Hebrew scripture. Interlinear Hebrew, English, Old Testament, they call it. This is put out by I suspect it's a Christian publishing house. Probably has something to do with the Reformed Christian Church, Christian Reformed Church. Dutch Reformed really is what it was originally. And so it's put out by Zondervan Publishing House, Grand Rapids, Michigan. Grand Rapids is famous. Some people might figure it's infamous for Zondervan and Eerdmans. And they both put, I don't know if they do anything but biblical literature, but they're awesome for it. So look at this, folks. You've got the original Hebrew. Then you've got basically interlinear. It's word by word. So the word order is going to, guess what? The word order in Hebrew is significantly different from English word order. But they managed to make it semi-understandable. But they'll put the word, or several words. They say Yahweh. It should be Yevah. You can actually tell the vowels are marked in the Hebrew script, unlike the Arabic script, unless you're looking at copies of the Quran. That's Jehovah. That's the way it's translated into English. But it should be Yevah. Yeah? You'll learn soon enough that I'm right about it. I don't know where they get Yahweh. Generally, Jews, observant Jews, don't say Yahweh, or much less Yevah. When they say that, they just say Adonai. And that's the way Jehovah's translated. It's translated as the Lord. So here it gives, I don't know, an English version. Is it the Revised Standard or American Standard Version? Understand, this is only a quarter, basically, of the Old Testament. So I've actually got a copy of the Old Testament. It's huge, thumping volume. And I have trouble. I read lying down, and that much weight on my chest with the